The trial captivating a nation, on the scene to keep you informed at every turn.
The defense brought up some inconsistencies with this testimony.
The lies and the dishonesty in this case is overwhelming.
With live updates and legal analysis.
Set that up for me. Why?
So the text messages between them kind of set up this argument that happened.
It's to show that they weren't always lovey-dovey.
He testified today that there was no fighting. They seemed normal, nothing was going on.
Harry, John's dead.
NBC 10 News has the latest on the retrial of Karen Read.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gene Valicenti. Court is over in the retrial of Karen Read for the day. In fact, it's over for the rest of the week because there's no court tomorrow, no court Friday. We'll get to the specifics of the schedule coming up. But first, let's welcome NBC 10's Katie Benoit. She's been covering this for us almost every day. And Peter Elikann is one of our legal analysts. He's also joining us. Now, there was news crackling on the radio this morning that the judge had a delay. She wanted to speak to every individual juror for some reason. Do we know what that was about, Katie?
So we tried to ask Karen Read outside of court today what that was about because the judge didn't say specifically, and Karen Read said she couldn't comment. And again, the judge, when she came back in after this went on, no one was allowed in the courtroom while these jurors were being questioned, but she came back to the bench and reminded them, you're not supposed to talk about the case, you're not supposed to talk to each other about the case, and don't let anyone else talk to you about the case. So,
but what are we hearing? Did someone from the member of the media try to approach them? Do we know anything about that, or this is pure speculation? Nobody knows. How about you, Peter? What are you hearing?
I don't know either. Nobody's heard anything, although we can kind of guess. It's probably one of those two things that either somebody was researching or checking, and looking at the news or talking to other people about the case, or that some juror was making comments to each other. Because a lot of people don't realize when the jury is listening to a trial, it's not like during the breaks they chat about what they heard that day, and then at the very end of the case they kind of make their decision. They are forbidden during the entire trial until the closing arguments are given and they get the jury instructions, and only then can they say the slightest thing about it to each other about the case. So if anybody was making a comment, even if somebody walked out of the room and said, gee, that guy was a fool today, or whatever, you're forbidden. And it must be difficult for jurors. They probably are filled with things they want to say. Yeah. And yet they just have to wait until the very end. Otherwise, zip up the mouth.
And they're not supposed to be consuming any media, newspapers, magazines, television, radio. They're not supposed to, but practically, Peter, do you think that they're following that up? I mean, practically, let's speak, we're outside the court, we're not in the jury. They're not listening to us, supposedly. What's the real story?
In this day and age, how would you ever monitor that? We don't do that here, but you'd always see about in other states and at other periods of time, they would really sequester the juror, where the jury would, at the end of the court and that afternoon, they'd all get into a bus or whatever, get taken into a motel without any, television sets or anything, and they'd be brought their meals to them, and that would be a real sequester. Now it's different. You can go home. I mean, it would be really hard for these people to uproot their lives where for 7, 8, 9 weeks you're simply going to be away from their families and either in motel rooms every night or whatever. So we don't do that anymore. But you're right. I mean, with all the stuff coming on us all day long with social media and the internet and TV and people commenting and all that, how would you ever monitor that to find out whether people are, checking out the case on TV every night?
Or the phones. I mean, we expect you to disable your Twitter app, your X app, your Instagram. So, look, it is what it is. And we're too deep into this to make any changes. All right. We've got Karen Read outside. She spoke a lot today, Katie?
She did speak a lot today. Some days we've seen her say nothing. Some days she stops at the bottom of the steps. Sometimes she goes another way. It all kind of depends. We got to figure out what way she's coming out of the courthouse. But today she did have a lot to say. But again, she said she could not comment on that jury issue. I do want to point out, though, 2 jurors had to swap seats. So that was kind of the only thing that we know for sure. 2 jurors had to swap seats where they were sitting. So not sure exactly what that means, but that was something that did happen today.
Okay, let's roll. Karen Read coming outside of court, the Q&A with the reporters over there. Roll it.
Is she the juror?
I cannot.
Jury was? Okay.
No, I cannot.
Wrapping up week 5, how do you feel?
I feel great. I'm anxious. I'm ready to put on our case, which will be more robust than it was last year. So I'm anxious for everyone to learn what we know.
What's the significance of the Proctor?
More witnesses.
What's the
broader and deeper.
What's the significance of the Proctor piece of glass, do you think?
it matched the glass on the bumper, but the bumper glass didn't match the glass, the cocktail glass, the cup. Nothing on the bumper matched the cup. One piece on the bumper matched a piece found the second week in February by the former trooper Michael Proctor. So he found a piece at 34 Fairview, allegedly, that matched a piece on the glass, on the bumper. Nothing else on the bumper matched the cup. What is the other breaking event of glass? There's multiple sources of glass.
What were your feelings this morning when there was some kind of issue with the jury? What are the emotions?
We've
like
had
when
these
that happens?
before, so we just wait for the judge to evaluate and let it play out, and it all works out.
How do you feel about the jury?
I feel good about the jury. I feel good about our selection, and I feel good.
Karen, when you have some days off like you have today, what do you tend to do?
I'm going to have a couple days without an alarm and without high heels.
Do you know if there's anyone more than just Walter involved in their case, or is he the only one left?
I believe that to be the last one.
Okay, so that's it.
That is my understanding.
And does your team plan to call Michael Proctor?
TBD.
Still TBD.
Still TBD.
Does your team plan to call Michael Proctor, the disgraced and fired state trooper who was the lead investigator in the first trial? Katie, talk a little bit about this glass that she's talking about, glass on the ground versus a match with the taillight. Set that up for us. And then, Peter, I'm going to ask you about the wisdom of having your client speak to the media while the lawyer's got to keep his mouth shut, hoping she doesn't say something out of line. Go ahead, Katie. You go.
Sure. So a witness, Massachusetts State Crime Lab witness, testified today, and she said, now there was a broken cocktail glass found at the scene, and there was also glass found on Karen Read's bumper. And she testified today that the glass on the bumper didn't match the glass in the cup, but there was other glass, as Karen Read was talking about, found outside 34 Fairview that Proctor found that matched the glass on the bumper. So a little bit confusing to follow, but there was a graphic for the jury so they could understand the pieces, because there's so many pieces of plastic, glass. So the defense made a graphic to try to help it to be easier for them to understand today.
All right, Dan, go ahead and roll cut 3, specifically where we're talking about the cross-examination over the bumper and the glass and whether it matches or not from Proctor.
There was one thing, item E, that did match something in this series of categories. Isn't that right?
Not a physical match, but instrumentally there was consistency.
All right. And this was an item, the only piece of bumper glass, the only piece of bumper glass to match anything else in your analysis. Matched what? What was consistent with what?
Item 3-3, piece E, was consistent in physical and instrumental properties with the sample that I took from item 7-14.
Which is the single piece of glass recovered by Michael Proctor, correct?
Yes.
All right, Peter. You're about to lose me with that. Can you imagine the jury trying to digest this with the little laser pointers pointing out a list of stuff? Go ahead, your take on it. Are they following it?
I tell you, I was having trouble following stuff yesterday when they were really getting into the weeds of hyper technical talk to the 10th power. You have to be very, very careful not to use too much technocrat kind of language, and you have to kind of explain to the jury in layman's terms that the average person can understand. And that can be a tough thing for either somebody testifying or for a lawyer. You don't want to lose them at all. Sometimes a case really does you really do have to give this scientific technical information, but it's a real talent and art how to do it without putting them to sleep and without and doing it in some way that they can actually follow and make sense to them. And that's not easy to pull off.
Well, I guess if we get to talk to the jurors after all this is over, they'll let us know whether or not that stuff went over their head or whether they were actually able to follow it. We have to remind everybody, Karen is okay to talk outside court, but her lawyers are prohibited. They have a gag order, and you gotta just feel for that attorney. I mean, look, she's schooled in her own case. She's almost like a paralegal at this point, but still, your client is saying things and answering questions, Peter, and the guy's got to keep his mouth shut. It's unusual.
Yeah, it's also the conventional wisdom. We lawyers never have our clients talk to the media because even if they're completely innocent, we don't know whether they're going to say something that when they actually testify and stand, they'll say, well, you said it differently. You're inconsistent with what you said long before. You made a mistake, one of the times. And so it never helps. And that's why when Karen Read started talking and doing interviews and documentaries and shows and things, I remember I kept saying to myself, what am I not seeing here? She has really, really good, talented lawyers. These guys are the best there are, state of the art. And they're letting her talk. And there's got to be some scheme or plan. And I keep talking to other lawyers about this, and none of us can figure it out because in my opinion, it really has worked against her. That the prosecutor, Hank Brennan, is often showing videos to the jury again and again throughout the trial of things she said. So he gets to kind of show the worst of her, and that she's not there to testify. So he's getting in her testimony anyway, but only the stuff that maybe isn't helpful to her. So again, maybe after this trial's all over, we'll find out what the scheme or what the idea was in having her do so much talking to the media, because we like I said, conventional wisdom, you never do that.
Yeah. Well, listen, it could be that they know that the jurors are consuming media as much as they've been warned not to. This goes back to what we were talking about. So maybe she's talking to the jury, assuming at some point she's going to communicate with them and say, wasn't that a ridiculous witness we had today? All right, let's set up this third and final bite with Judge Cannoni talking about following the rules. Katie, who was she talking to and who hasn't been following the rules?
She was talking to the jurors. So every single day when they sit down for court, she asks them a couple of questions. Those questions again, have you been able to refrain from doing any independent research on the case? Have you talked about the case? Have you seen anything on social media? And they'll all have to nod and say, they didn't do any of that, and they haven't looked into the case. So I'm not sure exactly what happened again. I can tell you those two jurors, they had to swap seats. So I'm not sure if it had something to do with them. Again, Karen Read couldn't comment, but she seemed to be talking to the jury as a whole. Perhaps they've been a little too chatty walking in and out of the courtroom or between sidebars. So it's kind of a mystery, but seems like definitely something happened.
Let's listen to it. Go ahead and roll this final clip, and then we'll wrap up our debrief for today.
So, jurors, I still have a couple of questions for you. Were you able to follow the instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case? And we've discussed the other two questions, but I do need to stress for you that it's very, very important that no one discuss this case. Don't let anyone talk to you about the case, no comments about the case. You've seen how hard the lawyers have worked to pull this case together for you, and everybody's given it so much time. So please, let's make sure that we follow that. That means each other. So with that, I know we're late getting started. We're going to take an abbreviated lunch today, only 30 minutes.
All right, that was the judge. Okay, Katie, the schedule, no court tomorrow, no court Friday, no court Monday. We see you back in Tuesday. Is that it?
Yes, Tuesday. And it's expected the prosecution will finish up their case next week. There might be only one more witness they might need to call. They still need to call a crash reconstruction expert, so it's possible that he'll be the last witness called next week.
Yeah. How does 5 days off sit with you, Peter? That's a long time for somebody not to be polluted by TV or media or their phone. It's a long time.
I think it's a break to everybody, particularly those lawyers, who are doing this trial. They've got to around the clock. I'm sure it's not like they go home and relax, at the end of the afternoon when they let out. They're probably working all night long. So this does give them a little bit of a breather. I'm sure they're grateful. On the other hand, the jury would probably like this case to be over to get back to their lives. So the fact that it's delayed a week, that may make them feel not great, but all in all, it's probably good for the case itself.
But with 5 days off, that gives you a lot of time to sort of forget things that maybe the attorneys want you to remember. The significance of a piece of taillight, the significance of the trumped up resume by one of the experts. So is there a little risk with 5 days? Well, that's just the way it is.
This case, whenever you have so many trials that I do are 1 day trials, they're 2 day trials, or 3 day trials. They have a trial that goes on 7 or 8 weeks, and particularly something like this, it's so detail oriented. There's so much scientific evidence that I'm not quite sure. They're all. I understand they're seriously taking notes during the whole trial, and But I don't know how anybody can keep this all straight in their head. I mean, we people who are doing analysis on it every day. Also, it's like I'm just overwhelmed. This is one of the most detailed cases with all kinds of angles to it.
We have the luxury to talk to each other and go over it again and repeat the soundbite if we have to. They don't have that luxury. All right, Peter. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Same for you, NBC 10's Kate. Thank you. Same for you too, NBC 10's Katie Benoit. And I'll see you on the news at 6, folks. Thanks.
The trial captivating a nation.
Jennifer McCabe spent longer than anticipated on the stand, sharing what she says Karen Read said as first responders were trying to save John O'Keefe.
Your client said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
She repeated, I hit him, I hit him.
She's testifying to whether or not it was a direct statement, I hit him, versus a question, did I hit him?
It's always inconsistent. Don't take anyone's word for it.
And no more nonsense. Let's just try this case.
NBC 10 News has the latest on the retrial of Karen Read.